And we're live. Hi everyone, it's Ash here from FPL Hints, back with another edition of FPL Hints Live. I know it's been quite a while, thought I'd take somewhat of a mini break. Not had the best of starts to the season as well, so there's not a lot to rave about. But on this stream, I'll have a quick look at Game Week 5, preview Game Week 6. I'll also show my captaincy polling stats, as well as xFPL stats and many other stats as well. So before I begin, I wanted to also thank you for your support over the years. On this day, 12 years ago, I began creating fantasy football content and can't believe it's been that long. Where on earth has the time gone? So look, as always, if you're able to like, share and subscribe, that would be greatly appreciated. So first and foremost, I'm going to go very quickly to my points from Game Week 5. As I've mentioned, there wasn't a lot to talk about purely because I didn't do too well. Really needed a green arrow, and look, it just wasn't to be in the end. So in terms of how I didn't take a hit, thankfully. A rare game week when I didn't. Scored below the average. In fairness, it was a good game week to have a bad game week, if that makes sense. So, 41 was below the average, but Edison, 2 points. Expected, was it too much to expect a clean sheet against West Ham? I guess with this new revitalized Conference League champions West Ham, probably it is. And then onto the defense, had to go Kabore deep, 2 points. Couldn't ask for more. And then Chilwell came on for a cameo. Was, of course, didn't expect the benching. 0 points, but then a fair few of us own him. And then Udogie, 2 points against Sheffield United. Again, expected a fancy return there as well. And then the midfield was a massive letdown, apart from Saka with his assist and clean sheet against Everton. But Mbeumo, Rashford, Son, Sterling, just 2 points galore. Just terrible. You expect at least one, more than one fancy return from those players, like combined. And then onto my forward lineup. Alvarez, thankfully, one good transfer decision that I've made this season. Brought him in relatively early, and he chipped in with 9 points. And then Haaland, again, we're all captaining him, just 12 points. But I think the biggest concern I have is that, of course, got Turner, who I guess it's a matter of time before he loses his place for Nottingham Forest. But the bench, Estupinan didn't play, Baldock, red flagged, Mubama, again, nothing. He's just been a massive letdown. I'm just checking, has he had his price drop as well? He was like, everyone was hyping him up as the go-to 4.5, and there he is, 4.4 million. So I've already lost money there. The problem I've had is that I've had so many fires to put out from the moment game week 1 started that I've not really paid attention to the bench, and I've got cash in the bank. So in terms of what I'm potentially looking to do for game week 6, I've got Edison in goal. Again, the moment I activate my wild card, he'll be out. Just he simply has not been worth his price point. The play always is a 4.5 goalkeeper at the start of the season, and again, it was fairly difficult to find one. Just 5.6 million, and he's kept, I think, 1 clean or 2 clean sheets. I benched him for one of them. It's just been a letdown. So again, against Nottingham Forest, you'd expect a clean sheet, but this Nottingham Forest team has been fairly robust of late. So I've got no doubt that they'll certainly be a thorn in Man City's, just in Man City's path ultimately. So got to navigate that move fairly carefully. And then onto the defense. For the time being with my bus team, Estupinan, I've got him starting, and of course he's now got European football for Brighton, and he played in that defeat against AEK Athens as well. So not expecting the world from him, but again, just due to the high ownership, it kind of makes sense to just start him. So I think in the case of Stupin, if he starts, you have managed minutes, and then it's still possible for him to also like get a cameo appearance, just like Chilwell did in his match last week. And then speaking of Chilwell, again, Aston Villa, I'm going to come on to the predicted lineups, but based on what I've seen, I'm hopeful that Chilwell should get a start against Aston Villa. And then got Kabore in the bus team right now, starting against Wolves. And Udogi's the other player, but then I feel that in the North London derby, it'll just be goals galore. But I could still switch Kabore out for Udogi, just due to the attacking threat that Udogi has. And then the midfield, as a whole, the fixtures are slightly trickier than last week, but Mbeumo against Everton, hopefully a fancy return. Saka and Son, North London derby. Like I said, goals galore. I'd hope that if there are any goals, that these two players will be involved in some shape or form. It remains to be seen if Son will still play up top, and of course Richarlison got his long-awaited goal as well. So it'll be interesting to see where Son lines up. And then you've got Rashford against Burnley, and just United just have not been at the races. I read a stat that they've conceded 3+ goals for 3 games in a row for a number of decades. So again, I've got no United defenders, so I'm not really bothered about that. But I just hope he scores against this Burnley team under Company, where there are pockets of space available, and you'd expect United to score at least 1 goal, if not 2, against Burnley. And then Sterling, Aston Villa at home, probably last chance loan for him as well. Can't sell him right now. I know, don't want to make him captain. Don't know what's happened there. Apologies. Going to flip my captaincy back. With Sterling, it was just a case of just getting sucked into that hat-trick ultimately, seeing that and then thinking that that would be the start of the purple patch, but it wasn't. And then you've got Fulham and Burnley, and then the fixtures change for Sterling from game week 8 onwards. So you've got Arsenal, Brentford. I'd probably have to get him out on a wild card if I was to sell him before then. But yeah, there he is for the time being. And then front line, Alvarez, Haaland. You can't go wrong with those two. Hopefully in this Forest match. The concern with Alvarez is played a full match during the midweek, so that's somewhat of a concern against Red Star Belgrade. But I'd hope even if he had managed minutes, he'd get something. And at the bench, again, Udogi for the time being, I'd probably flip him out for Kabore from this bus team. But you've got Baldock, Mubama, Turner. With this team, I look at it, I could easily not make a transfer in game week 6. I could make a transfer for a Newcastle defender potentially, or I could just do a -4. But it's a tough one. I haven't actually. I still don't know what I'm going to do on the transfer front, but my conscience basically says if in doubt, do nothing, and that's where I'm at the moment. I wouldn't actually mind 2 free transfers and do a mini wildcard, 2 free transfers and a -4 going into game week 7. But then the concern is that if I do that, and I'm happy with that team and it does well in game week 7, then I won't be able to wildcard from game week 8 onwards. So that's somewhat of a concern as well. So yeah, look, food for thought. Coming on to the preview of each of the games in game week 7, starting off with Crystal Palace and Fulham. So with Crystal Palace first and foremost, of course, Roy Hodgson recently returned back into the dugout, and Palace have got 2 wins from 5, and then Fulham also have got 2 wins from 5. I just feel that on paper they'll just cancel each other out, and it's got a draw written all over this fixture here. Coming on to Luton against Wolves, of course, Luton have had a challenging start to their debut Premier League season with 4 defeats in 4, and Wolves, who have only got 1 win in 5, despite some like individual performances they've got, like Neto doing well with his assists and whatnot as well. But you'd have to say that this is a Wolves win. Just can't see Luton getting anything from it. They seem to be on a downward spiral already from the get-go. And then on to Man City against Nottingham Forest. You'd have to say that this is a 3-0 pass score for Forest, but then for City, I beg your pardon. But of course, Forest have surprised many from when they returned to the Premier League last season as well. And Forest are 8th right now. So look, that should be a comfortable Man City win, even with their Champions League excursion only taking place a few days ago. And then you've got Brentford against Everton. Of course, Brentford, who haven't actually won in the last 3 games, and Everton, who are in the relegation zone without a single win this season, has to be a Brentford win there. And then on to Burnley against Manchester United in the evening kickoff. With Burnley, of course, they had that blank game week 2, but they're also in the relegation zone without a win. And then United have had their own troubles. And of course, a lot of players are unavailable. A lot of players are not performing for them. But despite that, was there something in that 4-3 defeat against, were there any positives in that Bayern defeat? Who knows? But I think that has to be a Manchester United win. They need a bounce back win. And if it's not going to be against this Burnley team, then who will it be ultimately? So yeah, comfortable win for a win for United. Saturday evening kickoff. North London derby. Arsenal against Spurs, of course, at the Emirates. It's Arteta ball against Ange ball, and I feel that it's going to be a very good match to watch on paper at least. And Arsenal 4 wins in 5, no defeats. Same with Tottenham as well. I don't want to say the words they'll cancel each other out, but I think this could just end up in a draw ultimately. That you've got 2 teams that have had a really good start to the season, and it'll be interesting to see how it pans out. You'd say that on paper, perhaps Arsenal are the favourites if you look at the form as a whole over the past 12 months, but I'm going to call it a draw in the North London derby for that 2 o'clock kickoff. Then Brighton against Bournemouth. Of course, Brighton are now a European team playing Thursday night football, and we know how Thursday night football can impact Premier League teams. Of course, they did a bit of rotation as well. They got Bournemouth at home. Can't really see them keeping a clean sheet. But yeah, they'd probably edge out a win. So I'd call it a narrow Brighton win, but problematic nonetheless if you've got triple Brighton still. And then on to Chelsea against Aston Villa. Of course, Chelsea just seem to be having problems. They can't play Luton every week. Only 1 win in 5 for them, and they just need to. They spent so much. They've sold so many players. Perhaps it's a case of them needing to adapt still. And Aston Villa, who, of course, had the European adventure as well. 3 wins in 5. I want to call it a very narrow Chelsea win due to that European fixture that Villa had, and just not a must win for Chelsea, but if they want to get going under Poch, they need to win these sorts of matches. And then Liverpool against West Ham. Again, West Ham with their European commitments, and Liverpool also had European commitments, albeit we saw rotation as a whole from both teams. I'm going to call that a Liverpool win ultimately. I think it just goes without saying at Anfield. And then lastly, Sheffield United against Newcastle United. Of course, Newcastle played in the Champions League and had that needed win against Brentford last week. 2 wins in 5 for Newcastle, and Sheffield United haven't got a single win since their return to the Premier League. 17th as it stands right now based on goal difference, calling that a Newcastle United win. So with that said, we'll move on to the captaincy polling data now. So I didn't even really want to run a poll, to be honest with you, but just thought I'd do it again for the sake of consistency. And I simply asked, who is the best FPL captaincy option for game week 6? Haaland against Nottingham Forest or other? And just under 9 in 10 have backed Haaland for the captaincy. So based on EO projection alone, I'm projecting that Haaland is going to have an EO of 190% plus among the engaged and elite 1000 managers. So what that basically means is that if you're going to go against Haaland for captaincy in game week 6 and your alternative captain doesn't haul and Haaland does, it's going to decimate your rank. And just to further validate like projections here, I'm going to also show some expected FPL points as well. So this is through DraftHound, and they're projecting that Haaland will score the most points in game week 6 with 9.1, followed by Mohamed Salah, 7.8, Alvarez with 6.9, Saka with 6.3, and Mbeumo with 6.1, and then the last two players who are expected to score 6 or more are Rashford and Foden. So just goes without saying, expected FPL points, high ownership in FPL. It will take a brave person not to captain Haaland in game week 6. And then on to the projections now. Well, predicted lineups actually for game week 6. I'm going to show two, and these are from Jump the Wave. So Emma's got a plethora of predictors who project who they think will start for a given game week. And for Manchester City, I'm not sure if it's fully viewable on the screen, but I'll read it out nonetheless. The predictors as a whole, just based on the most popular ones, they're projecting the lineup will be Edison with a defense of Ruben Dias, Guardiola, Akanji and Walker. Midfield options are Rodri, Nunez, Doku, Foden, Alvarez, and then Haaland up top, of course. So kind of goes without saying, like, of course, I'd expect at least 10 of them to start based on what the predictors have said. And I think that is more or less the lineup that is likely to happen based on the permutations that we saw in the Champions League. So it's fairly easy to predict, hopefully. And then on to Chelsea's lineup, I'm going to also share that as well. So there's been a lot of talk about who's going to start for them. So based on what the predictors have said, it's going to be Sanchez in goal and Chilwell likely to start at 72% probability based on what the predictors have said. And then the other defenders are Disasi, Silva, and Colwill. And then I don't want to mispronounce his name. In fact, let's just say it correctly before I get it wrong. Just 1 moment. That Hugo Chukwu. I think that's how you pronounce his name. Just make sure I've got that spot on. So he's the other, well, just over 6 in 10. Expect him to. Is that how you say his name? Let me just get that right, actually. Yeah, I think that's how you pronounce it. So just over 6 in 10 expect him to start. And you got, Gusto, completely forgot to mention him. Gallagher, Enzo as well. And then Caicedo and Mudryk, very likely that they'll start from the bench as opposed to starting 11. Jackson, Sterling, very likely to start as well. And sorry, just need to minimize this slightly. Who's the other player? Sorry, let's get this if I can. Oh, I think someone's been cut off there. let me just go back into it. Apologies. So yeah, I think one of the players has been cut off, but yeah, Sanchez. I mean, the main one here is Chilwell, that he is expected to start for Chelsea, and again, I own him. Haven't got any other players I can call on the bench. I'm going to start him as well, and this predicted lineup puts it in good stead. So I want to come on to the winning odds now, and these are from FPL. Well, FPL alerts. I've posted them out. So Man City, Brighton, Liverpool most likely to win in game week 6 for their respective fixtures, and then the lowest winning odds are conversely for Sheffield United, Bournemouth, West Ham, and Nottingham Forest with less than 20%. And onto the clean sheet odds. So hopefully this will give me some hope with Man City, 58% clean sheet odds, and Newcastle very high, 45%, Liverpool and Crystal Palace at 40% as well. Surprised at how high Brentford is at 38%, albeit they're playing Everton at home, but Rico Henry would be a massive miss for them. And then the lowest 3 for clean sheet odds are West Ham, Bournemouth, and Nottingham Forest. And then onto the final metric that they have for odds percentages from FPL_alerts. Man City and Brighton and Liverpool, beg your pardon, expected to score more than 2 goals with a percentage of 50% plus for each of those 3. Surprised that Arsenal and where's Spurs? So like 14% for Spurs in the North London derby. That's a surprise. So I would have just thought, like, as a minimum, like one of those teams is likely to score at least 2 goals in the North London derby. They tend to be like goal scoring affairs essentially. So okay, still fourth there. And then the lowest odds for scoring 2 or more: Nottingham Forest, Sheffield United, Everton, and West Ham for game week 6. And just a quick overlook at the stat center as well. So again, Pedro Neto for assists, joint top with Mohamed Salah. Didn't expect him to be there. And for not really a stat that we're too bothered about, but passes, Rodri, 569. Clean sheets, Leno, Sanchez. Again, it doesn't even feel like Edison's had 2 clean sheets. Just expected him to keep a lot more at the start of the season. And then Haaland well clear for goals scored. Again, Edouard, 4 goals for Crystal Palace in that Fulham match that they've got this weekend as well. Be interesting to see if you can add to that tally. So yeah, I mean, you look at the goals scored. Of course, Alvarez, he's there for assists, but for goals scored, Alvarez isn't even in the top 5 there. And you look at the goal scorers actually, like in terms of like high effective ownership, like Edouard isn't, Ferguson isn't, Awani for Forest isn't, Bowen isn't, He-Chan isn't, neither is Solly March or Callum Wilson. So just like interesting reading there. And look at the assists. Okay, Foden, Alvarez, fair enough. Then you got Mateta, Ward-Prowse, Aurier, again, Awani for Forest again, and Ayew. So it seems like early on there are a lot of differentials, as it were, who have hit the ground running when it comes to goal involvement. So is the template, I mean, the template took a battering in game week 5, but it's just interesting to see that, like, it's only a matter of time before the template comes to the fore, if it even will this season. But again, just a matter of time, really. So yeah, there you have it. that is my preview for Game Week 6. As always, if you can like, share, and subscribe, that would be greatly appreciated. Take care and all the best. Thank you. Bye.